It is time for a special interview here on Morning Wave in Busan. The G20 summit, we've been talking about it for some time now. World leaders from 19 countries and the European Union will meet between June 28th, meaning tomorrow, and go through the 29th in Osaka, Japan. And so this is the latest Group of 20 summit. All eyes will be on Osaka, as the world's most powerful leaders will meet to discuss a wide range of topics. To find out more about this summit, we have invited Mr. Harry Kazianis, Senior Director of Korean Studies at the Center for National Interest, to talk about the summit. Hi, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes, well, the G20 summit, as we know it, apparently began in 2008, held almost every year. But it seems that the summit has turned into what some people are calling a global diplomatic battlefield due to, I guess you might say, the recent outpouring of controversial international issues. Well, this time around, the one in Osaka, do we have an inkling as to what topics will be talked about, which will be highlighted?
I think there's really two, and they're both actually Asia-centric at this point. I think the first and the most obvious is the continuing struggles between the United States and the People's Republic of China.
Yes.
Obviously, there's a trade war that's brewing right now, tariffs that are being hit by each country, and I think international global markets are looking to see if either side is going to back down, or, quite frankly, if both sides are going to back down a little bit. I think what I expect is I actually do see it as some sort of compromise, or at least an inkling towards a compromise coming out of the G20. I think the Chinese economy is struggling a little bit.
Yes.
And I think the United States economy is also struggling. So I think for both sides, I think it's in both sides' interest to basically call a truce at this point, maybe to come out with some broad outlines of what a deal might look like. So this way, Xi Jinping and Donald Trump can essentially calm global markets. And I can tell you here in Washington, obviously, Donald Trump is very interested in making sure that he gets reelected. That is his most important goal.
Yes.
So I think for him, I think he's going to lessen his demands a little bit, try and get a compromise, and look like a winner coming out of the G20.
Right. So I would expect that both men, looking at their kind of respective personalities, would want to call it a win for, each side respectively, right?
Absolutely. And it was funny today. Steve Mnuchin came out with comments saying that a deal was 90% done. Now, he didn't give a lot of, context. He didn't really explain what that meant. But either he was trying to put some pressure on China to make it look like if, Beijing didn't agree to Washington's terms, basically puts the pressure back on them.
Yes.
But if we take his comment as accurate, that is a really good sign. Now, I don't expect there to be a signing ceremony in the G20, but it appears that things could be going in the right direction, and that's a win for everybody.
Yes, absolutely. You mentioned two topics. So the first one is the U.S.-China trade war. What's the second one?
North Korea, of course. I think that is sort of hanging over all this whole G20 summit.
Yes.
I do think actually the North Korea issue is going to get better as we get deeper into the summer and into the fall.
Okay.
There's speculation that, maybe Donald Trump or Kim Jong-un could have a snap summit in Panmunjom, the DMZ. I don't think that's going to happen, although I wouldn't be shocked if it does. But I think what we're really going to see is Xi Jinping maybe delivering some sort of message to Donald Trump that Kim is willing to re-engage. We've had these letters that have been traded back and forth. So we do have positive momentum building again. We've got Special Representative Began now obviously coming to Seoul, or may even be in Seoul now.
Yes.
So we have momentum moving again. People are starting to talk. And I think both sides understand that a compromise is in both their interests. So we'll have to see it all plays out, but the wheels of diplomacy are moving once again, and I think that's a really good sign for everybody.
Right. Well, just touching upon the possible third summit, we don't know for sure yet. I would expect that if there were to be a third summit between Trump and Kim, that there would have to be some tangible progress this time around because, patience seems to be wearing thin, people expecting so much out of these summits.
I do agree with you. I think there's two ways that this can go. The first, I think, is unlikely, where Donald Trump and Kim have a summit this weekend. I think the chances are slim, but I would not be shocked.
Okay.
Especially if you see Steve Biegun go to the DMZ and meet with a North Korean official, maybe Chae Sung-si or somebody else. that might be an inkling that a summit is going to happen. Now, if that sort of snap summit happens, you're not going to see substantial progress. It's going to be more like Donald Trump and Kim sort of, pledging to sort of re-engage. But if that doesn't happen, we could still have a summit later on, within a few weeks or maybe a few months. And I do agree there would have to be something substantive that would come out of it. And I think the only thing that would make sense is some sort of action-for-action compromise where North Korea gives up all of the Yongbyon nuclear facility and the United States agrees to maybe suspend sanctions. This way it gives Donald Trump a little leeway to say, I'm not taking the sanctions off, but I'm suspending them to sort of test North Korea's intentions. And that might be the magic formula that makes it work.
Going back just to a little bit on the whole U.S.-China trade, I guess, dispute or war, in terms of what's been going on, because, of course, a couple weeks back, there were so many headlines regarding Huawei, one of the mega companies involved, versus all these other restrictions, even on the whole issue of rare earths and whatnot. Do you expect that there will be more talk along these lines, or do you think that, those were just kind of these kind of points of escalation and things have kind of settled down for now?
I think things are starting to settle down, and I think a lot of it is coming from the American side because I think Donald Trump is smart enough to understand that a trade war going into the summer and especially into the fall when voters are starting to think about how they're going to vote in 2020, it could potentially go very badly for him. The United States goes into a recession during a presidential campaign, his chances are massively diminished. So I think for him, he understands it's better to, at the very least, to put the trade war on hold, try and get some sort of compromise with Xi going into 2020 or 2021, and then maybe restart at that point. And I think for Xi, he's in the same position as well. I mean, this year is the marking of the 70th anniversary of the People's Republic of China. Yes. He does not want to have any economic problems right now. So the stars are aligning really for both sides to sort of take a breath, take a few months off, see if a compromise is possible. But I think the thing we all need to understand is here in Washington, and for better or worse, China is thought of as the existential threat to the United States now.
Yes.
And that is not going to change. So I think we have bigger problems coming down the road. But for right now, I think there's going to be a pause.
Right. Well, if we can focus a little on South Korea, from what I understand, President Moon Jae-in has scheduled some official bilateral talks with his counterparts from a few countries, but definitely, so far, from what we understand, not with Japan. Do you have any clue as to what President Moon Jae-in will be focusing on in these side meetings with other heads of state?
Well, I think it's always been clear from the start that Moon Jae-in's obviously top focus is trying to build consensus towards his policy of trying to ease and have better relations with North Korea. So I think he's trying to get pulse checks with regional leaders. And obviously going into the summit with President Trump, he's trying to see sort of what different nations take are on the issue right now.
Yes.
And, trying to build consensus later on for maybe sanctions relief or, other types of inter-Korean projects that are going to come about. I don't think he's going to have a lot of success at the moment. But if there is a summit between Trump and Kim in the near future, or that looks like that's going to happen, I think the wheels for Moon will keep turning a little bit better. But what we're going to have to see, I think he's had the right approach. I've called his approach the Moon Miracle. I think he's done a great job. But, of course, this all hinges on U.S. policy towards North Korea denuclearization. If that doesn't happen, Moon is going to have a tough time trying to sell anything on North Korea.
I see. Well, just several days back, Xi Jinping visited North Korea, obviously, ahead of the G20. And so I would think that this would have some sort of influence on the Korean Peninsula issue. How do you see China playing its role in this region in terms of the peninsula?
Well, China has one of the most important roles, especially for me sitting here in Washington. The way I look at it is China really controls North Korea's destiny, no matter how you slice it or dice it. Because think of it this way, 90% of North Korea's exports go through China one way or another. And in fact, that's very important for us in Washington because if China wanted to, it could end the maximum pressure campaign within really a few weeks by just opening up the border. So I think we have to look at China as really an essential partner for Washington. And don't think for a second that China isn't holding that over Washington's head. I mean, I'm sure that she is saying to Trump, look, if you're going to wage a full-blown trade war against me, I'm going to have much more better relations with North Korea. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to say, start testing ICBMs or nuclear weapons, but I may open the border and start allowing North Korea to really experience some strong economic growth, and that would be very dangerous for the United States. It'd be a top concern.
If we can talk about Korea and Japan just for a little bit, how, if you had to choose an adjective, one word to describe the relationship, the status right now, how would you describe it?
It really is a very deep historical problem. I mean, obviously, the Korean people are very, very, history is a tough thing to escape from. I mean, I come from a Greek-American family that obviously had terrible problems with the Nazis and that legacy. And I think the Korean people suffer from those wounds of World War II as well. And it is a very, very deep historical problem to sort of figure out. I mean, history leaves wounds that are very, very hard to sort of escape and heal. And I think the only thing that is going to heal relations between Tokyo and Seoul is going to be time. And that is not an easy thing for people to accept. So I think this is one of those things that, both sides are going to have to engage in very, very tough negotiations. I mean, obviously the Japanese are very concerned about, having to pay back for wartime atrocities. And, they thought that these prior agreements had really sort of set the tone to sort of end those historical problems. But it just doesn't seem in Korea that people are satisfied with that. I think they want much more concrete apologies from the Japanese, and obviously that's very tough for them to do. So I think this is something that's going to be a big problem for relations for at least probably the next decade or so.
Well, lastly, I would love to hear what you think Trump's official 2-day visit to South Korea. Obviously, we're going to talk about North Korea, I'm sure. Do you think anything else is on the agenda between the U.S. and South Korea?
I mean, I think it's been reported pretty widely, but I do expect Trump to go to the DMZ. I expect Trump to give some sort of address there. This is just my own personal belief. Okay. And I think if he isn't going to have a meeting with Kim, I think he is going to offer some sort of new policy approach. Might not be radical. It might not be something crazy, but I think he is going to say, knowing that the North Koreans are watching him so closely, this is how I think we could compromise on denuclearization. Because you have to remember, Trump wants something that's a legacy builder going into the 2020 election. Sure. And if you look all around the world, in terms of foreign policy, he can't do that with Iran. There's really nothing in Europe. North Korea is his legacy builder. And don't think for a second he wouldn't love to win a Nobel Prize. I think that's his secret dream, to be honest with you. So I think he really is going to offer some sort of new policy approach. And it could be a compromise, basically picking up where things were left off in Hanoi. Sure. I do think a young beyond for sanctions deal does work for him. So we'll have to see it plays out. But I think we will make some history this weekend.
Well, thank you so much for answering our so many questions that we had for you. Take care, and of course, we'll keep an eye on the G20 summit in Osaka as well. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
This was Harry Kazianis, Senior Director of Korean Studies at the Center for the National Interest, and we talked about the upcoming G20 summit in Osaka, officially kicking off tomorrow, and we'll see what becomes of this summit.